most people get on a plane and just find their seat. But if you're large, getting on a plane can feel like walking into a test you didn't study for.
More than my size, more than the scale. This is my story. More than my
Hi everyone, and welcome back to More Than My Size. My name's Michelle, also known as Shelly, and I'll be your host. Now, if you listen to the first introduction episode, you know this podcast is all about honest conversation about weight, the mindset, and what it's like for me living as a larger person. Now, today I want to talk about something that a lot of people probably don't think twice about. But if you're larger, it can be one of the most stressful parts of travel. Airplane seats. Now, for most people, getting on a plane is just getting on a plane. You find your seat, you put your bag away, you buckle up, maybe get your snack out, and wait for takeoff. But if you're larger, getting on a plane can come with a whole lot of thoughts running through your head before you even step on board. For me, flying isn't just about the trip. It starts before I leave the airport, before I leave my home. It starts the moment I book my ticket. The first thing that crosses my mind: what's the seat size? Can I pick my seat? Is somebody going to sit next to me? Am I going to be comfortable? Are they going to be comfortable? And I'm going to be an inconvenience? And all those thoughts start creating anxiety. You start thinking about the seat width, the armrests, the seat belts, things that most people don't really consider. And if you've ever had a moment where you weren't sure if the seatbelt would fit, or if you might need a seatbelt extender, that moment can feel incredibly vulnerable. Because suddenly something that should feel simple is public. Now you sit there hoping everything works out normally, hoping you don't have to ask for something that's going to draw attention. And sometimes the anxiety isn't even about what actually happens. It's about being judged. Because unfortunately, people judge. Sometimes it's a look. Sometimes it's a sigh. Sometimes it's a feeling. You think you're taking up too much space. You're being noticed, and it makes you uncomfortable. And that makes the entire experience of flying feel stressful before the plane even takes off. Now, I've had moments where I walked onto a plane and immediately felt very aware of my body size. Aware of the narrow aisles, aware of the seats, aware of the people that are already sitting there as they watch passengers come down the row. And in that moment, you can't help but think about whether you'll feel comfortable or whether you'll feel like you're an inconvenience to someone or even everyone else. And that's a hard feeling. Because nobody wants to feel like their problem is your existence. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about airlines or other passengers. Airplanes are designed to fit as many people as possible, and space is tight for everyone. But the emotional experience of it can still be really difficult, especially when you already carry insecurities about your body. It can bring those insecurities right to the surface. Now, you might find yourself sitting there thinking about how you look, how much space are you taking up, or whether the person next to you is comfortable. And that mental loop can take away from what should be an exciting moment. Because usually when we fly, it's for something meaningful, a vacation, a family visit, a work opportunity, or just a new adventure. But instead of being excited, sometimes we're stuck worrying about whether we'll physically fit into the environment around us. And I think that's something a lot of larger people understand. I want to talk about a couple of my experiences. Now, the first thing we talked about was the seat. But the second thing that runs through my mind is the aisle walk. The long walk to the back of the plane. Now, because the aisles are tight, and to me, they're really tight, and you feel it when you're walking. My hips hit the side of every seat as I pass. Bump, 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 all the way down. Now, every single time it happens, I feel like there's eyes. I feel like everyone notices. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe they're looking at their phones or talking to the person next to them. But in that moment, it feels like every little bump is an announcement that I'm too big for this space. So I do the thing I think a lot of us do. I try to walk sideways. I suck my stomach in, even though it doesn't change anything, and I hold my bag tighter to my body. Imagine myself as tiny as I can be. Anything to take up just a little less room. Then you get to your seat. I sat down, and there's a moment there that I know every plus size traveler knows: the seatbelt. The second I sit down, I pull that seatbelt up, I put it across my lap, and I just pray. I want to hear that click. Suck it in. Because if it doesn't, I'm going to have to do that one incredibly embarrassing question, asking the flight attendant for the seatbelt extender. Now, let me tell you, asking for the extender is not the problem, is not the embarrassing part. The embarrassing part is the eyes. It's about being reminded that I am large. Most of the time, flight attendants are very kind. They'll hand you your extender quietly and move on. No big deal. But my experiences, a lot of people get whiplash from looking so quickly to see what I look like. I've had people turn around to see what I look like. And that's something a lot of people can't talk about. Now, another experience of mine is the emergency exit row. These exit rows are super appealing. They've got extra leg room. But if you sit there and you don't properly fit in the seat, or they feel you are inadequate to be able to assist in an emergency, they'll move you right in front of everyone. Now imagine that moment, sitting there, thinking you're settled in, and suddenly, "I'm sorry, ma'am, we're going to ask you to switch with another passenger." Now I understand the safety. I understand it doesn't change the hurt. Not because they did anything wrong or I did anything wrong, but because my body doesn't fit in this airline seat. When I book a flight, I Google the seats. What size seat does this aircraft have? I move my seat probably 6 or 7 times prior to boarding to avoid sitting next to someone. I mentally prepare myself for that walk down the aisle. And I pray, constantly pray, let the seatbelt click. It's not always the big dramatic moments that are hard. It's the small, everyday situations that make you suddenly very aware of your size. Chairs with arms, restaurant booths, waiting room seating, and yes, airplane seats. Those moments add up. They remind you that the world isn't always built with larger bodies in mind. And that can affect your confidence over time. Now, here's something I've been trying to remind myself lately. Just because a situation is uncomfortable doesn't mean I should feel ashamed of myself. My body is my body. It has carried me through life. It has gotten me through so many good moments and some really hard ones. And it deserves respect, including from me. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to improve my health. It doesn't mean I don't want to make changes, but it does mean I'm trying to stop letting situations like airplane seats define how I feel about myself. Because if we let every uncomfortable moment chip away at our confidence, eventually we start shrinking our lives to avoid these situations. We stop traveling. We stop going places. We stop experiencing things. And I personally never want to let my weight stop me from living my life. So if you've ever felt anxious about flying, if you ever worry about fitting in a seat, if you've ever had that moment where you felt exposed or uncomfortable in a public space, I want you to know you're not alone. And I know a lot of people have felt the same exact way. And part of what I hope this podcast can do is bring those experiences into the open. Because when we talk about them, they feel less isolating. They feel less like something we have to carry alone. And maybe little by little, we can start to build more confidence in ourselves, regardless of where we are in our journey. So that's what today's episode is really about. Not just airplane seats, but the moments that make us feel aware of our bodies and learning how we can move through these moments without losing our sense of worth. Now, thank you for listening to this episode, More Than My Size. If this conversation has resonated with you, or if you know someone that might need to hear it, go ahead and share. Also, don't be afraid to subscribe. I'll be sending out more episodes every day of struggles on weight, on the mindset, and my life stories. Thank you, and stay beautiful.